The following video interview is part of the USMC Vietnam Tankers History Project and were recorded in the Vietnam Tankers Reunion Association in Washington, D.C. on October 30th, 2015. Would you please state your name, your unit, the years in Vietnam, and the rank while you were in Vietnam?
Justin Donnelly, First Lieutenant, 1802, 1st Tank Battalion, H&S Company, 1966.
And from here, it's your show. You want to talk about what you want to talk about and go
All right.
down.
Well, as boring as it is, I thought it'd be good to record for history what the first tanks did, at least initially, when they went in country in July. And that's what we're talking about here.
When timing-wise?
February 1966,
Okay.
Beginning then.
So a year after we got in country.
But yes, after 3rd Tanks went in and B Company from 1st Tanks went in, and then H&S Company went in February of 66.
So it was right after First Tanks officially got in the country?
Right then, yes, right from the beginning, because I was tasked with the job of creating our civic action program for the hamlet known as Tic Tay High, which was Tic Tay number 3. There were 3 hamlets. And if you remember this, is that in Vietnam, hamlets were not villages. A combination of hamlets were a village. And we had Tic Tay number 3, Tic Tay High. And Tic Tay High was located, if you will, north and west of the hill where 1st Tanks and the anti-tanks folks went in July, in board of the new airport that was being constructed by RMK.
And was there a reason that we did a CAP program there, or was it because the airport was there and they didn't want anybody upset? Or?
I don't know what the reason was, except that starting in Okinawa, I was sent to Vietnamese language school by the CO, A.W. Snell, who made us actually practice a civic action program on Okinawa with some of the inland Okinawan villagers. I had Sergeant Paul Tannehill, Corporal Jim Roberts, and then virtually the whole medic staff of the battalion, as well as the doctor available for this program. So we started it on Okinawa, got the hang of it, and we did stuff for, I don't remember the name of the village in Okinawa. So by the time we got to Vietnam, we were tasked with immediately going to the assigned hamlet, which was Tic Tay High, and creating a civic action program. Now, that civic action program, as I understood our mission, was to make contact with the hamlet and the villagers and the village chief, as you were, and find out what we could do to help the folks in that hamlet through the village chief and make their lives better. And that's what we did immediately upon going into country. We went and met the village chief, who was about 5 foot if he was 5 feet, and always wore a pith helmet. If you remember those, the sun helmets that people wore, the Britishers wore. He wore a pith helmet and brought him up at least to 5'3". We had, fortunately, we had someone who could do both Vietnamese and English, and he had some English, so but no French. But he was very, receptive. He did warn us right off the bat that the Viet Cong would take an interest in what we were doing, would take an interest in what he was doing, and yet he seemed to be unafraid of that. But he made it very clear that the Viet Cong in the area were very active and involved, but that there were things that his folks needed. So what we did was, and I can't give you any particular order, but we immediately instituted, if my recollection's correct, a 3-day-a-week clinic where we met with,
MedCap?
I was talking to Doc Hackenmack, and he used that term. And that term, in my knowledge, did not exist. They were part of our civic action program, they being the 1st Tank Battalion medics. And what they were doing may have in fact become or was MedCap. And that is to say, they were meeting with whoever came in with medical problems, as well as introducing some sanitation practices. for those folks. There was a lot of skin problems, a lot of problems with lack of soap, lack of any antiseptic or anything else. And let me back up a step. Tic-Tay High was a very backward village, if you call it backward, or certainly 19th century. I mean, they pooped in the fields where the rice paddies were. They also fished in the river that abutted Tic-Tay High. So they were both rice growers and fishermen. And so medics started off with the medical program, actual medical care, as well as sanitation practices. We found out they needed help in reconstructing a building that was their school. We had been told that the Viet Cong removed one of their teacher for their school, and the building itself was in need of a roof and whatever. So we didn't do the work, but we did supply plywood and whatever. And they actually used it on that school. It's not as if it went to the VC. Well, I mean, I heard stories about that. We brought
It also did in the village chief's house.
Correct, and none of that. No, he seemed to be absolutely upfront, certainly with that. All right. Another thing we did was to introduce, if you will, a little capitalism, and that's is that we found out after a week or two there was no way to get our utilities or laundry done, and we arranged a commercial, retail, if you will, laundry business with the folks from Tic-Tay High. So we would bring in, my recollection is 3 times a week dirty laundry, and return 3 times a week with clean laundry. Now, I say clean. They were using the river that was adjacent to Tic-Tay High. It was downstream from Agent Orange. It was
the other village pooping in the field.
Right, all right, anybody upstream. And the color was the dark brown of this table that's in front of me. Nevertheless, it would come back and would be clean and it would be dry, it would be folded, and other than a slight aroma indicating its origin, was better than what we were wearing, because what we were all wearing stunk.
Just as an aside.
Absolutely.
During the monsoon season, when the sun wasn't shining, our laundry in Don Ha, when we were able to use it, they used buffalo dung in the building, and so it came back smelling buffalo dung, burned buffalo dung.
Right.
Same kind of deal.
Yeah, but
God bless them, right?
But yes, God bless them. But in fact, they were on time. It was done well within the confines of what we're talking about, because the hamlet itself there was no road into it. There was a path into it that could take a 3/4 ton, excuse me, or a Jeep, but that's all.
Not a 6x.
Not a 6x. Could not make it because the path was tortuous and yes, and as wide as a Jeep or a 3/4 ton. So, and then we did other things, one of which stands out in my mind, and that's is that every couple of weeks we would go in with a generator and a movie projector and show movies on Friday night. And it was Friday night at the movies for these folks. And virtually everybody and this was the only hamlet that we were doing this program, but folks from Tic-Tay too would come and watch, and I'll add something else. So after the first night, there was a huge crowd. It went over well, and of course these movies were in Vietnamese. Do we have a problem, sir?
Are you hooked up?
I am.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right. I got my Ted Baxter microphone on. And so, very large crowd, and of course we waited till dark.
What kind of movies? Vietnamese movies?
Yes, Vietnamese, in the Vietnamese language. And after the first night, we went back and talked to the village chief, and he said, yes, everybody loved it, and the Viet Cong loved it too. And so we had uninvited guests that watched that movie that we, Sergeant Tannehill, myself, and Corporal Roberts were not aware of, and I'm not sure. So I was never very comfortable going back there. Neither was Roberts or Tannehill. But we did this on an every 3-week basis, as long as we could get new films. So that is The Civic Action Program, we ran it week in and week out, day in and day out, and because it was all part of General Krulak's winning the hearts and minds of the local folks. So that's all I can remember about that program, but that's what we did.
No booby traps, no...
All right, well, I can give you a funny story, if you will, all right, about booby traps. We were always conscious of the fact that there might be booby traps, but Corporal Roberts was my driver, a great Canadian guy who subsequently went on to run a beef cattle operation up in British Columbia. But anyway, and I would sit there in the passenger seat with my grease gun on my lap, and we would grind away. Four-wheel drive is the only way you could get in there, and top speed 3 or 4 miles an hour, but it was very convoluted. And this one particular day, we came around a bend, and there's a wire out in front. I yell at Roberts, "Wire!" Okay, and I jump out, and like the John Wayne that I was, I caught my foot underneath the seat, so my head goes down into the sand with my helmet crammed up against my head. Roberts bailed out the other side, and we hit the wire, and we hear, and then we hear hilarious laughing by a bunch of Vietnamese kids who had wired our progress and thought it would be the funniest thing that they ever had. And of course, as I said, I gave them a bonus by not shooting them and virtually ramming my head into the deck. But so we got ambushed once, all right? And that's the ambush.
That's the ambush.
That's the ambush. Well, it's...
Well, you know, thank God it came out the way it came out.
The way it came out. No, we never... we would also... myself and a couple other folks, Roberts included, would go down, every once in a while and go swim in that river just for yucks. It was fresh water, although it was tide affected by the tides, but we would go swimming in there.
Even if it was brackish, it was okay.
It was okay. It was better than it was better than the salt from the ocean. Okay, and it was cooler than the ocean.
Yeah. No search missions, no
Nothing.
obtrusion, no questions, no possible suspects taken on helicopters back to black areas, none of that.
None of that. We did go up to Tam Key and coordinate with the. I may get the nomen.
Army?
No. Tam Key was still within ICAR,
Okay.
and it was the Vietnamese Army.
Okay.
And we met with the.
You know what? I'm thinking of Tam K, which is further south.
Tam Key was between Chu Lai and Da Nang.
Gotcha.
And Tam Key was the district chief, and we met with the district chiefs and the Arvin up there, and they said that they were aware of the Viet Cong activities, but they also said that no news is good news. That is to say, that there, no ambushes, no booby traps, no nothing. We were wired in. And there would be occasional, we had snipers up on the hill who would shoot at us, and every once in a while the colonel would send out 3 flame tanks to attack that one sniper.
But that was into headquarters. That wasn't into you guys working in the village.
Not in the village. We never had any problem of any kind. We had no report from Tam Key that there was anything other than the fact that the VC were watching what was going on. But now, there were no young men around. We did send out day and night patrols around, and one day on one patrol, and I'm kind of diverting, but I went out with that patrol.
On foot?
On foot. And we did encounter 2 young men who we thought might have been VC, but we had no direction to capture them or
They
bring.
didn't have weapons.
They had no weapons. They were just young men.
Right.
Okay.
Guilty of being young and Oriental.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That story that you just told is more ammo for me to completely discount and discard William Westmoreland's major battles, let's make big armies and go through the countryside and rape and pillage and all that, as opposed to, and firing Chapman for having CAC programs because they don't work. And General Krulak, who read the Marine Corps, Small Wars Manual, said, win the hearts and minds of the people and you won't have any problems.
I will tell you this.
Yeah.
I was a bright and shiny first lieutenant, approaching 25. I wasn't even 25 yet, but I heard that this was General Krulak's idea, and all I can sit here and tell you is that for the time I was there, and I know afterwards because I talked to the lieutenant who took over after I left country, there was no problem whatsoever. And the village chief was thrilled, and we all knew that the Viet Cong were out there in an issue, but he was happy to be doing something that helped his folks, and clearly, and we helped them help themselves. I mean, that laundry, we didn't do the laundry. We didn't fix the building for them. We made available the medical people, and it was a fine relationship.
You're an enabler. I don't mean that in a bad way.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So, terribly unexciting, except for the ambush.
Great history. Great history stuff.
Okay.
No, it's great history.
Yeah,
stuff. So,
yeah.
There's got to be some other things besides the ambush with this, beetle nut ladies and
Oh, well, I mean, well, just some personal.
Farmers with nasty things in their feet.
Well, certainly. First of all, Chulai was not a existing municipality, town, or anything else.
Right.
It was where, and the name came from General Krulak.
Chinese.
And it means something, I think it means Krulak or Brute or something, but it was General Krulak's name. So, there weren't young women in slit dresses. There were farmers' daughters whose teeth were already turning black from betel nut. They all chewed betel nut. They all had scabs or whatever, or injuries. I mean, they were hard-working agricultural or fishing people who were 19th century is all I can say. And so there was no Congress, if you will, of any kind. Marines being Marines, you look for women, but there was nothing like that in that area, at least at that time. And the other thing is that there was no drugs because we were out in the boonies.
Betel nut.
Yeah, except
You want
betel
betel
nut.
nut,
Yeah,
right.
and nobody I saw ever wanted to try betel nut. Okay, so yeah, it was. We would run into farmers doing their fields on these daily patrols, and they were just doing what they had to do, which was to plant rice.
The daily patrols, was that a reactionary squad that
was
made up of cooks and bottle washers and whatever?
Oh yeah, H&S Company personnel, and okay.
Office Pogue and whatever.
That's right.
Maybe even in 1811 or two.
Well, I was either so arrogant or stupid. I mean, me and Roberts would hike around the area, just the two of us. And I joined one of those patrols and got help from Major Collier for not taking over the patrol. And of course, my response as a 24th Lieutenant, I'm going to take over a patrol that was being led by a very qualified sergeant who had been enlisted, so his time in grade was about 12 years, but he was a sergeant because he had just come back in. And he's got his patrol. He's got everybody with their... And I'm saying, I don't need to take over not knowing a thing about what they're supposed to be doing, and I tagged along. And we ran into a whole bunch of folks on the other side of the hill who were doing a bunch of planning, and I wanted to find out what was going on, and so did Roberts and the two of us. I mean, we were armed at all times, and we were always trying to be alert, but aware. That's right. That's situational awareness.
So were you in 1802?
Oh, yes. Okay. One of my duties was, I never was called to do it, was to TC 52 or 51, I can't remember which one.
One of the
H&S gun tanks.
Sure.
Oh yeah, no,
And you went to tank school?
I was lucky. There's two of us joined 1st Tank Battalion, January 1964. Arthur E. Burns III, who left the Corps some 25 or 28 years later as a full colonel, and he was a regular, and I was a reserve, USMCR. So guess who went to tank school, and guess who got OJT? So I got OJT with Hubert Duncan, who was the fellow who wrote all those crazy little books about the Marine Corps.
Gene Duncan.
Gene Duncan. He was my first CO.
He just passed away recently.
I know. He was my first CO in Charlie Company in First Tanks, and Charlie Company
In country.
No, Charlie Company in Pendleton
Oh.
was M103A1s.
Okay.
So I went to school on M103A1s, and then after 9 months, got moved to Bravo Company, which was A.W. Lamb. Okay, and then A.W. Lamb Carl Lemon took the first platoon in country. And I think Ray Stewart took my platoon because just before I was supposed to go in country with him, I got mononucleosis and spent a month in Camp Pendleton Naval Hospital being a pincushion for Navy Pogues. And so that's how I ended up in HS. And but I never got called, much to my dismay, of TCing whatever it was, 51 or 52, I forget which one.
Okay, so while you were in country, you did this CAP program or
Yes.
CAP?
They didn't even call it Civic. Well, I guess it is. We called it a Civic Action Program. I just didn't use anything besides Civic Action Program.
Right. Well, and some people later called it Combined Action Platoon because they were doing defense
And
teaching
staying
the
in the
people.
hamlet.
And staying in the hamlet.
That's
you never
right.
Stayed overnight.
No, we never stayed overnight.
Did you eat food there? That's
Yes,
a good
we ate.
story.
Well,
Sure,
okay.
come on.
Yeah, okay, that's when I tell my kids because yes, we ate there, and of course, in that area of Chulai, first of all, when I say we're going 3 to 5 miles an hour with the Jeep, is the sand was beach sand with no hard underpinning, at least during the dry period. So you were churning sand all the while, and it was tropical or desert, for whatever you want to say. But there were lots of little lizards, and they used to catch the lizards, and the lizards, after gutting them, were their meat for their rice. So anyway, the first meal we had there, we go to sit down, and of course, it's on their perfectly maintained dirt floors with something holding, and I said, oh my goodness, it's white rice with raisins. Okay, we sat down, and then they started to move their hands, and the raisins took off. There were flies on the rice. So, and the meat was dried, not dried lizard, but cooked lizards, and white rice with raisins. So, yes.
So the lizards, were their little feet showing and
No, they cut them up and they
chop them up.
chop them up. But
Okay, so you just bits of meat.
bits of meat.
You have no idea what the.
Oh, we knew what they were
dog or
because we
whatever.
saw the kids with little snares catching the lizards. We just never put the 2 and 2 together until we ate our first meal.
So after you ate it, was it okay?
It was fine. It was fine.
Did you eat enough, Mom?
Yes. Yep.
And did you eat many meals there? Did you
So-
bring food to them?
No, we never brought food.
Not
Never.
seized, nothing?
Not while we was there. Now.
That's interesting.
Well, you said that. You just jarred something in my memory. At some point, the village chief did ask us, he had heard about a new strain of rice that was being introduced through aid,
Honda rice.
okay? And
Honda rice?
he asked us if we would ask for that, and that went up the chain, and as I understand it, we did get them some of this. No, I don't know the name. I just knew there was a new strain of rice that he asked us for.
My understanding is, and they call it a Honda rice because it allowed them to have 2 rice crops a year instead of 1. It was a fast-growing rice, and it didn't need as much care. And I believe that rice, regular rice, it only can be underwater for a certain period of time, and then it has to be dry. And if it's too long underwater, it rots. And I just read about this recently. And so this Honda rice, this miracle rice, you could have it underwater 3 times as long. And so if it had monsoons, it wouldn't wreck the rice. And go ahead.
Well, you have jarred my memory, and that is later on I learned that there was in fact a new strain of rice that we got to those folks and did throughout South Vietnam, which then increased the amount of rice that they could grow, okay?
And they call it Honda rice because these poor indigenous farmers who walk everywhere could get a Honda motor scooter.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, so yes, we were asked for Honda rice, and yes, we ultimately got them some Honda rice.
Okay. Now, did you, besides enabling them to have a better crop, did you bring them chow from the mess hall, or meat, or potatoes, or anything that they could?
They never asked us for anything.
Isn't that interesting?
They never asked us for anything. They did ask, what they asked for, we would attempt to do and did. I mean, as I said.
Help us fix our school.
Fix our school, all right.
No gimme.
No gimme. Oh, the kids would, of course, always bugging us for their stuff, but no gimme. No gimme at all. I mean, he was, I can still picture him in my mind's eye and talking to him. And even the district, I never got a bad feeling from the district chief up in Tam Key. No grease. I never. It's like you come back from Vietnam and people say you ran into all you were dopers, and you were right, and drugs, and I'm saying, not my Vietnam, and way different experience. Now I credit that to the fact that this was not a area where there was any kind of a town or municipality. These were all farmers. Yeah, they started to set up things because we were right next to Highway 1, and there were, shops. But even that, there were not that many. So who we were dealing with, reverted back to Okinawa. The people we dealt with doing this practice civic action, if you will, on Okinawa, were internal to the big cities, and they were just fine, and there was no gimme, and they were just terrific folks. So, same thing. Remove ourselves to the agricultural folks, and they just wanted to be left alone and do their thing. Okay.
And they didn't care about communism, or most of them didn't care about communism or capitalism or anything.
I remember having and it was a half-baked because of the language issues, the conversation with the village chief, and he said, we don't care about that. We just want to be living in peace and let other people deal with that. And we said, fine. All right. And by the way, there was a lot of Catholics that came down from the north into the south, but this area was really, they talked about the animist religion.
Yeah.
That's what they had. Is they had their ancestors and their graves, but no Protestant, no Catholic, no Buddhist. What was the name of the emperor that was still around for in the recent past? Bodai, yes. So there was some reference to that, but yeah.
Isn't that something? What a great story. I just, and I read stories about how these villages that we were exposed to, and these friendly villagers, and in reality, 90% of them were Viet Cong, and if they could do something, without being overt, they would do something, against us, whether it was, bury bombs or, carry weapons for, and your guys are watching the movies.
Absolutely, they watched the movies, and whoops, when I was told that.
It's a completely new story to me. It's a new story. I've heard a million stories about Vietnam, and I haven't heard anything like this.
Well, I didn't know if I had. All I could tell you is what I actually experienced. Yeah. So and as I say, it is what it is, and do I firmly feel that we were right to intervene? Sure, because these were communists who were killing their teachers and removing their teachers and killing their village chiefs. And I'm sure he had to do something to make peace with the Viet Cong to keep his job. On the other hand, he was really performing a job. He really was. He was, and he was apparently very well respected by his folks. So all I can tell you is that's my Vietnam in 1966,
So what about first tanks and any experience from either H&S or the tanks that came in? I mean, was there lots of action? Not for you, but was there lots of action going on, and there were lots of casualty reports and yada yada yada, or was it still the war was still too new, and We weren't being as overt as we could have been.
It was, at least from First Tank's point of view, I'm trying to remember, because I went out, having a Jeep that was my own Jeep with my own driver, I took advantage of that. And we went out to the MLR, and I don't remember.
MLR.
Main line of resistance, okay.
Just let the people know.
Oh,
Okay.
main line of resistance,
Yeah.
all right. And back then, all right, let me back up a step, and I can't, you need pictures or maps to see this, but where we were in Chulai was just inboard of what was being built as this airport. We were inboard of that, and we were looking west towards Laos and up a valley whose name I can't remember, and off to the right was a almost a vertical series of hills that occasionally folks would shoot up, and you could see, if you look through the scope on the tanks, wood gatherers or others, and this was pretty far out, but you could still reach it with the gun tank. So anyway, the MLR was in a series of low foothills with tanks out there supported by infantry, 7th Marines is my recollection. Yeah, it was absolutely was 7th Marines. And you know, I mean, the first week or so, there was a lot of shooting at shadows from us and anti-tanks. And where we were, you could look up north, and I forget who was on the other side of the SATS airfield, but the first couple of nights in country, there was a lot of shooting up there, but it was mostly reactive, people shooting at nothing, getting used to, right, okay. And then we had the unfortunate instance of, what the hell? We had grenades coming into the wire and really getting folks upset every night.
Booby.
Yeah. Well, we found out, and you know, there's the book and how things are done by the book. We found out it was being done by a supply sergeant, and he was gone inside of 2 hours when he admitted what he had been doing. He had been hand grenading us, our own guy.
He was throwing at the Marines?
Yeah, inside the wire. Okay, and he disappeared, and we'll leave his name for history, and I won't repeat it. But after that, we would have probes, and we would have snipers, and then we, you know, and as I said, the CO sent coordinated during the day, you know, 3 flame tanks going from where we thought the sniper was shooting, and you know, 3 loads of napalm in an area that cut that down pretty quick. And but for first tanks right there. Supporting 7th Marines, but they were still not using tanks as much as they should have.
Was one of the skippers Sanders? Was that we had a story in the sponsored box, and Sanders, I think he was early on and he wrote a story, and there was one picture, and it was at night, and it was a flame tank shooting.
Okay.
And he said that they dispatched flame tanks to. It's the first time that I heard it specifically doing flame tanks at snipers.
Oh yes, well I don't remember that name. I don't remember.
Sanders. So of course, you know, it's always a nickname.
Yeah, I mean I remember. I can't even remember who was the HNSCO. All right, I can't. And you know, and we had all been together. So the fact that I can't remember is just a function of old age.
Well, and it didn't matter because you didn't see him again
That's
6
right.
months later.
That's that's right. But I can absolutely verify that the Snell sent out 3 flame tanks a couple of times to take care of snipers.
This is the first time that I've heard Colonel Snell's name since 1999.
Okay.
He showed up at, and I shouldn't be.
The first, oh no, I was there.
He went the first
yes.
reunion, and he apologized. I almost cried.
Mm.
I've never had a Marine officer say something like, I mean, used to,
I know.
and he let down his hair and said that, and I was flabbergasted.
Well, you know, it's funny you asked that. I asked him why he didn't make general, and he said he shot himself in his career in the foot because he was, before he came to First Tanks, he was it G1
Okay.
for 1st Mart Divvy, but he wanted command, And of course, being G1, and he was a tanker, so he got tanks in Pendleton before we shipped out. And so it was his battalion. But he told me he did not make general because he fought the business of taking the 100,000 low-scoring folks, and he said that would be a disaster for the Marine Corps and that they should never do that. And
This is when the recruiting.
This is, what, a year or two into the war?
And lower the standards.
Lower the standards for that 100,000?
Yeah.
And that's why he didn't make general, according to him.
God bless him.
Oh, yeah, and I believe that. And, you know, and he was G1, so he would have been personnel, and that would have been his bailiwick after. I mean, I think he obviously continued on after he had the battalion.
Right, and the saddest, and another sad fact is he didn't want to really continue with the VTA. He just came to the reunion to talk, and I don't know if he's still alive or not.
He probably isn't, just by numbers, although he could be. I mean,
Right.
Dean Esser, had the battalion before him, and he got shot, lost an eye.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was A.W. Snell that sent me to Vietnamese language school.
In
Okinawa.
Oh, in Oki. Okay.
Okay, in Oki.
Okay. Have you practiced your Vietnamese?
My mother was brilliant in languages. I have a daughter who's brilliant in languages, but that gene missed me. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. It's a tonal language, as you know. And I had my Vietnamese language teacher, who was a young woman from Vietnam, crying on several occasions because she couldn't believe that I was so. It was. She thought I was not working hard, and I really was. But anyway.
Or not trying. Right?
Not trying, right? And I was really trying. Well, you know.
Well, you had an interpreter, so it was.
That's right. And I could catch a little, and yeah.
So, do you have any other stories, like the kids that are in the village, and did they have a birthday party for somebody, or
The kids.
Did the guys from the battalion, more battalion guys come and be part of this thing, or?
Well, there was. Okay, well, that's a good. Yeah, that's another spark. There were always Marines asking to come along, and we took as many as we could fit all the time, and we tried to divvy that up. That's right, and the kids were kids. I mean, the kids were fun. Now, they were a pain in the ass when they were asking for gum and candy and all of that, but they were relatively disciplined in that respect too. We never really had any real problem. I mean, we all like kids, but yes. Oh no, you're right. We were always giving rides because the folks on the hill were bored out of their tree a lot, and they wanted to see what it was all about. And I don't think there was anybody who was in as much contact with the locals as the three of us. Yeah, it was fun.
Did you ever go to another ville? Did they say, we need you to go to this ville and help this cap unit work, or any of that? I mean,
no, not to my recollection.
You just stayed one?
We stayed, we were dedicated to that hamlet.
Right.
We did go on a frequent basis up to Tam Key to make our if you will, our thank you to the district chief, who was Arvin, and but again, we just got good feedback, and it was
no PFs or anything in this area.
I got one story. There were PFs, but not in Tic-Tac 3. They were out further. Certainly were. There was Arvin and Popular Forces up around Tam Key, and there was some south at Queen Anne, and there was Arvin. I have to tell a bad story. A lieutenant with a map. Now I'm going to tell you, the maps were for shit, and they were screwed up the very first day in country.
They weren't in English.
Well, not only in English, but they were screwed up as to locating things. And I wanted to go to visit the 7th Marines, who were south of where we were. So give a first lieutenant a map in a new area, and so I took off with me and Roberts again. And we followed the trace because I asked where 7th Marines were. And we followed what I thought was the road, and we were coming down, and we see these two PFs going by, and we waved, and they waved at us, and I'm sitting there with my grease gun, and we go by, and it's okay, and we get to 7th Marines, and I'm talking to my buddies, and says, where'd you come in? And I explained where we came in. He says, you know, that's not the road. I said, it's on the map. He said, well, I said, well, what about the PFs we saw? He says, those weren't PFs. So, okay.
They were green uniforms.
They were what was explained to me what a PF would look, and it was daylight. It was in the middle of the day.
But nobody goes in there.
Not where we went.
Right.
Not where we went.
It's Indian territory.
Indian territory. Yeah, okay.
They figured you must have been. You knew what you were doing. It's like driving in the ghetto.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we were so, if you will, ballsy. All right. That and again, I was situationally aware enough to be sitting there with my grease gun on my lap, and they were at shoulder arms, and so. But
so did somebody take over this program when you were ready to?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Or did you do this for 6 months and then do other jobs?
No, I did 6 months, and it was bye-bye for me, because again, I started off in 1960. It was my time was up. So, okay.
So 6 months in country.
Yeah, it was goodbye.
Okay, and then you got out.
I got out.
Yeah.
But yes, oh, absolutely. And I had to train my replacement. I forget his name. But he was, again, he was a gung-ho.
And of course, you had no correspondence. You didn't follow up and say, you guys are doing whatever.
No.
Too bad you didn't, right? But shame on us.
Shame on us, shame on me, nowadays. And again, I wish I had taken.
Send them an email.
Yeah, I wish I could have a bunch of photos of all the stuff we did, but I've stayed in touch with Roberts, and Tannehill passed away, but Roberts is still alive.
And Rand Roberts?
Jim Roberts.
Jim.
He was a man at motor. I don't know, Jim Roberts, motor transport type.
We've got some Roberts, and I'm
okay.
Could be.
He's from Canada, and okay. Paul Tannehill passed away about 12, 14 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I got to ask this Tannehill if he's any relation.
There's another Tannehill who won't join.
Okay.
And I think he's Tannehill. I think this is Tannehill.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
and I forget how Tannehill spelled his name, but
yeah.
he was career type. I mean, but yeah.
So when you got home, did you voraciously read about Vietnam?
I didn't for about 5 years, and then after that, I've been reading everything I can get my hands on. Of course.
The war and the people in the country.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. All of that, and of course, I'm very upset at Robert McNamara and Lyndon Baines Johnson and what they, prevented us from being the forces that fought there from doing. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Well, when I was there, and in 1968, after the Tet Offensive, that summer, the rumor was we were going to line up on the DMZ and just go north.
Yeah.
That was the rumor. Okay. And that's all it was a rumor, because we never did it. But in the middle of June, we didn't know this, and I read this later in history, that the Vietnamese moved the 152 millimeter guns right up to the edge of the DMZ and shot and was able to reach the ammo and the POL dumps at Dong Ha. Okay?
Yep.
We had no bombs and no bullets. Invasion canceled.
Yeah. No,
they heard that we were going to do it.
Yeah. So I continue to read, and I remain upset over what Washington did to this whole thing, and I was thrilled that we've done better, and of course I don't know, but we still could have done a lot better if we had a different leadership.
Situation.
Different leadership.
Yeah. Instead of the war on poverty and those other things, but that's all political.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
We're a little bit, we don't have the full hour, but that's fine. You said your piece, and I learned some things that were really, I loved learning. When you stop learning,
well,
you might as well die.
I'm with you, John. I mean, I retired right after my wife died. Then I got sick, so I started reading again, and I'm going through about 4 or 5 books a week. And
oh wow!
Oh yeah, no.
If I do 2 a month, I'm happy at 2 a month.
No, I'm doing that, but I know it wasn't exciting, but I thought it would be a piece of history for the 1st Tank Battalion and the Vietnam tankers. So.